We are back. Another Monday. I actually had my topic for the day figured out last night. And I try not to think about these in advance too much. I try to on the day. Within 24 hours, I'm cool with that too, but on the day, generally. I had my idea, and then I changed my idea because different things are on my mind. So I'm going to shelf that one. But I'm going to talk about peace and grounding yourself. Why I think these are important for therapists to do, and why they're not just some light topics that they get thrown around flippantly. Grounding, that's a therapy-esque thing to say. Peace is generic in terms of its description, and most people don't deny its importance. It's kind of a boring topic, but I'm going to explain it slightly different and expound a little bit therapeutically, and why I think that the general understanding of peace in our culture is a misunderstanding as opposed to an understanding. So, yeah. My definition of peace changed when I better understood the Hebrew word shalom. It's a common word to be said in a Hebraic setting, but it's a very important word because it often gets translated to peace, which is true, but is not a full picture. Like with most words that get directly translated, the direct translation is often not quite right. I don't do these videos with pizzazz. I might get to the point where I edit the thumbnails or put edits in the video. For sure, the interaction I want to be raw and straightforward. I don't know if I'll do much editing. In the event that I eventually do, I will try to add the actual Hebrew word peace right here, if I ever do that. But don't expect it. I don't know. But there's the space for it. If you're not seeing it there, look it up and look at the image, because the Hebrew word is 4 symbols. Now, I'm not a language scholar, but I'm going to describe this in a way that I best understand it, and there are for sure people who could correct me a little bit on it. If you look at the Hebrew word, and Hebrew reads right to left, so most of us read a book left to right, Hebrew reads right to left. And you look at the symbols, and I'm going to do this by memory because they're slightly hieroglyphic in a sense. So the first symbol looks kind of like a claw-shaped thing. I'm going to be impressed if I can remember what they look like offhand, like a claw type thing. The second symbol is kind of like that, kind of do it, like, and it's like a staff. It looks kind of like a staff. And the next symbol is more like that, like a nail. And then the other symbol is a bit more of like a spinny thing, kind of. It's more frazzled. If I described any of those wrong, and you're looking at a different picture, what you're looking at is probably accurate. But the way that you would read them is loosely for each 4 words. First symbol, more like a fight and an attack. Second symbol, more of a staff, like holding a staff. Third symbol, a nail. fourth symbol like a storm. If you read that and take an interpretation from it, you could take that to mean literally, not just peace, but to mean to fight the authority that binds chaos. Clause, fight, authority, staff, bind, nail, chaos, storm. Fight the authority that binds chaos. Why do I think that that is a much better definition than peace? Think also about the Latin phrase, if you've heard it. It goes, see if I can pronounce Latin right, si vis pacem, para bellum, which means if you want peace, prepare for war. There's similar tones to both of those. The point of both of these things is that peace is not a sit back and have peace type thing. It means that you fight for peace. And that doesn't mean we warmonger and we destroy till we get what we want. What it means, and this is why I like the Hebrew one more, is that there are authorities in the world that create chaos. There are things out there that have authoritative say in your life that are chaotic. So, it might be a super rude neighbor, for instance. Might be a boss that doesn't treat you well. It might be, if you're watching anything to do with politics, you might feel really misrepresented by a certain person. These are people that have a level of chaotic influence and control in your life. So to find peace, you have to fight that authoritative control. And that doesn't necessarily mean violence, because sometimes that chaotic control can be your own thoughts talking down to you. That can be you saying, I'm worthless and I'm pointless. That's a chaotic authority speaking wrong and evil into your life. You will not have peace if that voice can scream louder than you can calm it. So, for me, prayer is an extremely powerful tool against chaos. It is absolutely a fight against that authority. And it's one of the best ones for me. And really intentional prayer. There's nothing wrong with short ones. So for me, I had a couple chaotic things happen today. 3 things. All of them, 2 of them that I didn't predict, 1 that I was hoping wouldn't happen and it did. All 3 of these I might tell to someone and they might say that's not a big deal. Plain and simple. It doesn't matter if other people say that. If you're finding chaos in something, then it is chaotic to you. Now, you might be being immature and have no need for that to be chaotic, but the point remains that it currently is chaotic, and that's a problem. So, for me, 3 things. 2 of them happened, and I am walking every day right now. I slept in today and didn't walk this morning, and I really wanted to walk, and it was pouring down rain, and I'm in work clothes, and I didn't want them to get soaked, and the sun came out for a minute, and I'm like, maybe I can get my walk in, and I took a 45-minute walk. I got it in. I got hit with the downpour for like 5 seconds at one part, but we're good. That whole time for me was spent in prayer, and that is a different experience than a very quick 2-minute thing. I would argue that that walking time was more relational. As someone who believes in God, that's a connecting time, a relational time. And I believe that the God of the Bible is a relational God, not some fully disconnected thing or entity. And I say that in the context of this video because it's very important to understand why I would frame that as a relational thing and why prayer for me would be a grounding experience. It's not just me putting out, it's a two-way exchange is how I view that, in the same way that a conversation with someone that you really value their opinion could be very beneficial. So why am I bringing this all up in relation to peace? That is a tool that's important for me to find peace and to find a level of shalom that I can't get anywhere else. I can get aspects of it somewhere else. And there may be even moments where I can feel more of it at times than expected. But the consistent way is to do the activity that I just said. And that's a reminder for me and for anyone who struggles to find peace and learns how to do it. You need to hold on to what did that and write it down, document it. I could do a whole nother video on how foolishly people, myself included at times, don't document good things. The amount of people who forget positive things that happen, you think you won't, but we do. We forget them. So, and this is especially when we're in distress. This is one of the reasons it's important for people to have safety plans or to write down things that are helpful for them in times of emergencies, because we don't think straight when we're not feeling well. When you're depressed and you don't want to go to the gym, and you don't want to eat well, and you don't want to spend time with your loved ones, if you can look back at journal entries or even notes you've made to yourself that say you feel happiest when you do these things, those are you telling yourself. That's a message from you in the past to you today. You're having a relationship with your past self, and that past self is encouraging you of something that it knows is good for you. And when you are down, it can lift you up. This is why when you have conversations with people who you know care about you, and they say something encouraging, and you might not feel perfect, but you believe them, you need to be able to do that with the past version of you. And if you can't do that with the past version of you, that means you're probably still stuck in not trusting yourself and not trusting the person that you are today and the growth that that person's on, and that needs addressed too. Because you should be able to write yourself a note tonight that tomorrow you can read and be grateful for. There's a saying that I will tell myself sometimes is, I'll say, thank you, Pastor Ryan, when I make a good decision, or if I go to, if I'm having a kind of a rushed morning and my clothes are already laid out, I'm grateful to the past version of me that took care of tomorrow's problem. If you can follow how I'm conceptualizing that. And everything I do today, ideally, is going to help the world around me and prepare future me for success. So, for instance, if I want to buy a house someday, it's probably good to save money. If I say, hey, in 5 years from today, I want to buy a house, and I get to 5 years from today, and I don't have $1 saved, I might have a right to be mad at the past 5-year version of me. But every day that I can look at my bank account and say, I added $20. That is still closer to my goal at the end of 5 years than adding nothing. It's actually not insignificant at all. $20 a day. It's kind of a lot. We have a relationship with ourselves across time. So if you can start to figure out what brings you peace, you are doing your future self a favor, and you're investing in the future by sacrificing part of today. And it's almost no sacrifice at all to just write down the thing that brought you peace. And I mean real peace, not something that made you feel good. That is not peace. Peace does not always feel good. It usually comes with peace, feeling good. But they're not the same thing. We can have peace when we don't feel great. We can rest in a peaceful state when we don't feel great. So, to bring that back around to that Hebrew understanding of fighting the authority that binds chaos, I don't necessarily always want to go on long walks and pray. I actually often don't, to be clear. I like to do them separate. Walking is a great way for me to connect spiritually, but 45 minutes is a long time. And to open my heart for peace is a different thing. That's another piece. A lot of people will say that they want something, but they're actually not trying very hard, and they're not opening their heart to it. Some people will say, I want a good relationship with my spouse, but they're acting bitter, and they're rude, and they're putting that person down, and they're doing pretty much everything in their power to not create a good relationship. And I believe that they want it, but it's obviously not super important to them. Through their actions prove that in the moment. And they might feel guilt every day. So it's not 100% incongruent, but If you really want something and you're not getting it and you're not making steps towards getting it, it's usually because you're actually prioritizing something else. So you're making something else more important through your actions, even if you don't always feel that. Something's misplaced. So getting your heart put in the right position is very helpful for these things, for finding peace especially. And peace is not always something that can just be grabbed with ease. And like I said before, if I told y'all the 3 things that bother me today, I'm choosing not to. I think some of you would empathize and others would be like, it's not a big deal, man. And you're all right through your lens, not through my lens. And some of you would hear it and think it's actually way worse than I thought it was. It's because my lens is unique to me, everyone else unique to them. So you have to fight for peace, and this does not mean you should always be ready to take up arms against something. There's a lot of metaphor in this that finds itself in the practical, but being willing to fight things that steal peace from you. This is when we cut off relationships that are bad, when we leave jobs that are bad, when we stand up for something we believe in knowing that we're going to get hurt. We're fighting for something bigger than us. And you might say, well, peace is you. Yes. But this is why I said before, you're fighting for all of you. Today you might make a painful sacrifice so that the tomorrow you can have peace. Maybe one day is stressful so that the next 10 can have joy and peace, whereas holding off wouldn't do that. One thing that I struggle with, both professionally and personally, is just a life thing for me, is I hate conflict so much that I'm willing to get into it. So what I mean by that is I'm the type of person that if something goes wrong, I can see how, if that's left unchecked, how after 10 times what it'll look like in a snowball and how it'll blow up. And what that also means, I can be wrong about that. It's good for me to check in with people who are much more whatever, laissez-faire, flexible people who don't really worry that much. They can help level me out as someone who thinks potentially to a point of overthinking or anxiety. It's helpful for me to have people in my life who don't really think deeply about a lot of stuff, and not in a critical way, but they go with the flow. And then when they're presented with something, they're like, oh, let me think about it. They're not stressing about the future. That's a really good balance for me. So what I'm saying is I'm willing to get into a smaller conflict now to avoid a big conflict later. And what that means is sometimes I get into smaller conflicts that would have resolved themselves if left alone. And so that's for me to decide when do I step in and say something. But the point is I don't want to deal with an explosion later. So I address it now, right? If somebody that I'm really close to says something that's kind of off towards my wife, for instance, I think a lot of people might be like, they didn't mean it, it's whatever. I would have to wrestle with, do I bring that up? Because if that happens again, I don't want to build a habit of this being okay. Now, knowing me, I'm probably likely to let it happen twice. And we're talking like a small, slightly rude thing. It's not like a huge deal, but enough to be bothersome. Probably after the second time, I'm going to make a little bit of a deal about it. Because I don't want it to escalate, and I don't want it to be a habit, and I don't want it to build up to the point where it's problematic for me, for my wife, and then especially if the person is not trying to be rude, they will generally want to know before they keep messing up over and over. And I believe that about most people. I think most people want to be better people. And just kind of depending on the relationship, how we choose to call things out. And also knowing that we can be wrong when we call things out. But that people who are trying to be better usually want to invite that in. And those are the type of people I try to be friends with. So point being, there is a level of like, yeah, there's maybe some suffering and maybe some pain to create peace for the future. But it shouldn't be done in a way that's always looking for problems. It should be, how do we bring peace on earth, to be cliche that way. How do I bring peace to my life or help other people with peace? Finances are a really good example. A lot of people who have money and who've had to work for their money will talk about that work that they've had to do to provide. But it's investing time and effort and toil for peace for themselves and their family. That's what allows certain families to take the weekend off, to go on a vacation. We build that up. So you are fighting for your future. And I'm meaning more of that. You're taking time out of your life to prepare for a better tomorrow. And for me, it was taking time out of my day to have a better day. It was a quick return on that investment, and I feel better. And it was actually after my walk that I came back and dealt with the third chaotic thing, and I felt more peace about it overall. But it took time to connect with the thing that brings peace, and I think that does a favor for all of the clients that I saw today as well. I did my walk before any of my appointments today. And I have a full day of work tomorrow, and I think this is going to help me with that. And I know I'm probably going to have to take some time to make sure I rest well today and I prepare well for tomorrow. I go to work all day, then I'm going out of town. So certain things need prepped. So even though it might be more relaxing to go home and watch YouTube for a bit and lollygag, it's going to benefit tomorrow me so much more if I just pack for my trip and I wrap up some work stuff and then go to bed at a decent hour. Tomorrow me will be so much more grateful, and I'll be less likely to be stressed, less likely to be overwhelmed, less likely to be anxious or depressed. And that's more, I like the sound of that than 2 hours on my phone. The comparison is non-existent. It's not even close. 2 hours of just enjoying time on my phone, which will start to decline into, we all kind of hit that point when we're on our phones too long, we start to feel it. Versus tomorrow, which I'll leave my home at like 9:30 a.m. and then I'm going straight out of town. So I'm going to work and then drive, and I'll get to my destination at 10. So we're talking about 12 and a half hours. I'm going to have 12 and a half hours that are pretty all right. At their worst, like pretty all right to good. Or I can have 2 hours tonight of just wasting time, because I'm still going to stay up and have to pack and do all that crap anyway. So that is an investment for the next day, for the future. And that is finding, I'm paying for peace. And so how I connect all this back around to therapy is, it's important for people to do something similar, to find what can bring you peace and to fight hard for it and to work for it. And I think most of us can do this in tandem and in collaboration with other people. I don't think this is about whose peace is going to win. I think there are things that bring people peace, and we need to utilize those things, and they can be done together with people. I feel peaceful when I'm with my wife. It's not exclusive to me, and no one else can be around it. And she feels that way with me. So these things can happen together, is my point. This isn't like fight for your peace only. The more healthy and okay and at peace that you are, the more useful you are to the world around you. Someone who's just a ball of anxiety and a mess and distressed and broken down doesn't help very many people. They absolutely still can. But the more we are okay, the more we can make the world around us okay. And the more that I'm okay, the more I'm able to sit with the people I just described who aren't okay. Part of that's my job. Not everyone who comes to therapy is a mess. But when people are a mess, it's my job to be able to not be a mess and to be present with them and help bring them to the next level that they're trying to get to with their emotions, with their pain, and with their experience. And the more that they become okay, now the more available they are to help other people in the world around them become okay. Peace is important. And that's the point I'm making today. And I love the topic. I can talk more on it, but I'm going to leave it there. So, thanks for listening.